I was about 14. I think I'll be in by 10. I was like, all right, man, that's a pretty good game to take away from that. But yeah, so my dad was fairly remarkable about it. But yeah.
Towards the end of First Lord's Faerie, a lot going on, of course, but this one bothers me. Does Gyarados ever sit down?
Does Gyarados ever sit down?
Yes.
Yeah, eventually.
Oh.
Yeah, but that's what, and the mountain sat down. That's it. Where we kind of got to have the epic last minute samurai face off, and then it's like, okay, all the wind down stuff, we can assume that happened. But yeah, that was Kitai was busy taking care of that stuff while Tavi was off getting to look cool. Mostly because he was the series hero, and that's his job. I don't make the rules.
You established in the Codex Alera that Alerian civilization grew from a lost Roman legion that was somehow transported to that world. Are we ever going to see anything connecting the Dresden verse to the Codex Alera? And second question, the preview for Skin Games has Harry running through the prison of Eldritch entities, and one of them calls out something that seems very Lovecraftian. So does the Dresden verse take place in the same universe as H.P. Lovecraft's work?
I don't know what you're talking about, Lovecraftian. I don't Lovecraft outsiders. There's no link, none at all. As far as the interconnected story worlds go, they are interconnected in a way. I don't know if they'll ever come out in an actual story, but in my head they're interconnected. So.
You teased downstairs at the panel about liking to possibly do some research in Hawaii. Have you, or do you intend to write the story of what happens with Murphy and Kincaid in Hawaii?
To do that, I need to go to Hawaii and collect local folklore. It's the only responsible way to do it. But so far, there hasn't been time to do that. So, I mean, it's a story that I want to write eventually. I don't know if I'll get to, but I want to write it. Right, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, how did you get the idea of how you were going to portray the vampires in the Dresden Files?
How did I get the idea of how I was going to portray the vampires in the Dresden Files? Well, what I knew I wanted to do at the time was I wanted to do not movie vampires. And that's not really, but that's not really a helpful way to build something, is by saying I want it to be not this. If you set out to build a house and say, I want it to be not that doesn't really help you very much towards getting the house built. So instead, I had to figure out where these vampires came from and what I did want them to do. And I kind of broke vampires out into the three main groups of vampires, which were gross vampires, blood-sucking vampires, and sexy vampires. And the gross vampires were kind of the ones from actual folklore, the ones that are like the animated corpses that come and smother you and stuff like that. Then the blood-sucking vampires were kind of that's really sort of a movie-esque sort of invention mostly. But they were also, kind of based around vampire bats. And so it's like, okay, why don't we build the bloodsuckers from pretty much from the South American region, and we're going to start from there. And so that that was where they got started. The corpse ones are the ones from old Eastern Europe and old American folklore. So that was where the black court came from. And then the sexy vampires, which are just pretty much the Anne Rice vampires plus. I said, okay, we're just going to call them the white court, and they're just going to be the complete clan model vampires, and we'll have them about too. And so that was really, and then I decided that in the Dresden Files universe, the movie vampire comes from the blind man and the elephant facet of humanity, where humanity keeps running into these vampires in different places, and they're different creatures, but they kind of do sort of the same thing, and they get conflated into one image that gets put on the movie screen. So that's where movie vampires came from, because somebody runs into a vampire, manages to survive it, and says the vampires are like this, and the next person says no, the vampires are like that, and the third person says vampires are like that, and everybody threw them together, and that's what's on TV. But these three separate groups were the ones that were the foundation of it. So
what would they
that's
say
why I
about
got
the
that.
Jade Court?
But yeah, back here.
Are you going to further explain the Jade Court then?
Am I going to further explain the Jade's Court? They are mysterious and powerful. Their power is exceeded only by their mystery. That's right, I made a dude, where's your car reference. Yeah.
In Small Favor, it seemed like Hendrix was attracted to Guard, but she didn't reciprocate. And then in Even Hand, it seemed like she did reciprocate. So I'm wondering, are Guard and Hendrix an item now? And if so, how does Marcone feel about it?
Well, she doesn't reciprocate like right out in front of everybody. She's too cool for that. Marcone doesn't mind as long as it doesn't get in the way of the job. When things get in the way of the job, Marcone minds. Otherwise, it's kind of useful because he can always threaten one of them with the other one. Not that he would, because that's counterproductive, but there's leverage.
Hendrix would crush it.
Plus, Hendrix has been, he hasn't want to disrupt Hendrix too much. He's busy working on his thesis. I love doing that with Hendrix. Yeah, Hendrix is going for he's working on his thesis for his English degree, but good old Hendrix, the dumb guy. But yeah, let's hear it.
We're going to find out what Ramirez got into after changes.
Are we going to find out what Ramirez got into after changes that left him busted up?
Yeah.
Maybe. It might be one of. It might fall into the category of wizards do things that get them busted up.
Ramirez more than something.
Yeah, well, that's true. Yeah, I want to have. I want to have more of Ramirez and Wild Bill and Steve showing up doing stuff. I don't know if we'll get to in the series because at the end of the day, the series is about Harry Dresden, and I can't really give the spotlight to too many other wizards, or then he loses his thunder, and I don't know.
He'll get mad at you.
But definitely though, if I hit a spin-off series, they'll get a bigger place than that. Because the Dresden Files is going to come to an end at some point. Because I don't want to do just a going on and on and on story. There's a definite end point in mind. Otherwise, you can't build up to the end one. So it's going to, the story's going to be over at some point. But I've already got an idea for a spin-off that I'm working on. So.
Woo!
But
What do you eat?
it'll be fun. It'll be fun. At the very back. Okay, sure.
Two things. One, there was a piece of really bad fanfic that had Anita Blake and Dresden meeting, and it really didn't make any sense at all because she would not have frightened him as much as suggested. If those two characters soul gaze, what do you think it would be like? The other thing was, as far as you were talking about shortening patrons and having the perfect arc of everything used up, it's okay Dick scared me a lot by not using up perfectly good storylines that he laid there, and then he did something that made no sense to me. So don't sweat it too much.
I'm sorry. He was insufficiently lazy, maybe? Because
I don't know.
I hate laying track that I don't use.
Actually.
Yeah, I hate laying track that I don't use. It's too much work. As far as Harry Dresden and Anita Blake, oh, God, I don't know. I think Anita would make Harry very, very nervous. She's a necromancer, for crying out loud. I mean, he's met some of those guys, and they're not stable people. Yeah. I mean, as far as fanfic goes, have you read the Harry Dresden My Little Pony fanfic? It's My Little Denarians, and My Little Denarians is called.
Wait, what'd you say?
My Little Denarians. And there's another one called the Dresden Phillies, which is apparently pretty good. So, I mean, fanfic is a wild and woolly world, you go there at your own risk because you can run into concepts that you did never, Harry Marcone slash. Yeah, exactly, right? There's not enough brain bleach in the world. But yeah.
A question that strangely follows off on that. Hopefully not quite that.
Okay, you're on probation here, man.
You got ownership of these characters. They're yours.
Yes.
You put them out in the world by publishing. How does it feel to kind of let go of the creative control that you have and basically watch 10,000 rabid fans such as myself, go crazy and say, well, I think this is what Harry would do in this case, and that they read about it. It has to come across your radar screen. Or see somebody make a TV series, and we talked about that earlier. How does it feel to create this, know how it looks to you, turn it loose, and it kind of changes? What's that like?
I don't know. It's kind of neat. A lot of times I look at it and it's you know if I'm reading the fanfic, then it's taking the physics major to the Star Trek movie, because I'll sit there and go, nah, that wouldn't happen. Nah, it's not like that. So I'm no fun. But the point is not that. The point is I write the books so that people can enjoy it and have a good time. The way that some of the people enjoy the books and have a good time is that then they go out and they play with the same stuff themselves, and that's cool. They should get to do that. There should be more people creating fun stuff. Eventually, maybe somebody will write a Harry Dresden fanfic that turns into its own super cool, popular thing. The way that a bunch of other fanfics have turned into their own super cool thing. Whatever it takes to get you writing. If you want to gather that creative energy and make something awesome, do it. I'm glad people are doing that. As far as defending my copyright goes, you know what? Kind of at this point, it's like I'm pretty sure that I can out Harry Dresden anybody. And I'm going to continue out Harry Dresdening anybody for a while, So and who knows? Maybe when I'm done, somebody else will the fanfic will go nuts. Once I'm not writing Harry Dresden anymore, people will be like, oh my gosh, we need more. And maybe somebody will make something out of that. I don't know. But yeah.
Two things. First of all, I'm about to start playing for the first time tabletop RPG. It's actually the Dresden one. So, is there any advice that you would give for somebody who's starting out in that? I mean, I've read a lot of fantasy. I've played, RPG video games, but I have no idea how to even begin to create the character and kind of just get into the whole story. And the second thing, is there any way to get a copy of this video? Because people keep asking questions about books after changes, and since that's where I read up to, I keep having to shut my ears and let you know.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know. This isn't me. Ask him.
Oh, yeah, hi.
Well,
you can talk to me afterwards.
We can talk to Jim about whether or not he wants us to post it.
Yeah, I mean, here we're in public here, so
Yeah.
But
I
anyway,
post it on YouTube.
Yeah, that's what I plan to do.
As far as the RPG goes, just make sure that whatever you do, it's not what your game master expects you to do. Because those guys, if you do that, then they get lazy and the game isn't as much fun. So make sure you're doing something he's not expecting. Never mind, you're gonna do that anyway. It's gonna happen that way. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you. I asked you this in the panel that we just came from, but I didn't hear from you. When you're writing about mythological creatures and creatures of lore and stuff, where do you get your either inspiration or research or anything? Because, I mean, for example, a red cap. I have read about it in your books. In Harry Potter, I've read about it or seen it in like a World of Darkness game. So there's so many different things. Where do you get your ideas?
I do most of my research in the children's section at the library.
Hey,
Because if you go to the adult section on mythology and you start reading it, you can't walk 5 paragraphs without tripping over Freud or Jung. That's no fun. I want the story, and I go read the stories. And you go to the kids section, you get the books where they just tell you the stories, and that's all it is to it. And that's where I go.
Okay.
So that's where I do a lot of my research. I mean, you can do the grown-up academic thing, but the kids' stories are better, and I think they speak to your heart more than they speak to your head, and that's what I like. But that's me personally. So. Yes, ma'am.
I love the books on CD, and particularly the James Marsters. Is he going to do any more of them?
As far as I know, they're talking to him about that. They want James to do it. There was some kind of scheduling issue with something that he had to do over the last one, or over Ghost Story. But they're planning on getting him for the rest of it. How are we doing for time? We're okay. Okay. Good. Yeah. She's got a question.
I'm sorry. Did you pick Baltimore for the RPG, and if so, why?
Did I pick Baltimore for the RPG?
Yeah.
No, that was Fred who lives here. Fred runs Evil Hat, and so as they're set up, they picked Baltimore, and I think mostly because he wanted to run a game there or something. I don't know. Okay, because Baltimore's awesome. But that was why they picked it, and I was so pleased with how the game came out because they obviously they worked very, very hard. They really busted their tails on it, and they produced an awesome gaming book, which can probably stop bullets. Have you ever picked up the thing? They're heavy. Yes.
Me. I'm actually a writer myself, and I have so many stories I want to tell. But as far as like going into getting published, I have no clue how to go about that. I just wanted some advice from you on how to do that.
Best advice that I ever got, I mean, because you can send your stuff out to agents and editors and so on, and you can send your stuff out for years and years. It took me 10 years to break it. Best advice I ever got was to go to conventions and meet the people who you're going to be sending your stuff to, so that they've actually met you and know who you are, because it makes a big difference, and it does. Actually, I went to the convention that I finally got an agent. Was at a writing convention, and I had gone and I said, I'd met this this agent, Risha Mainhart, because she represented Laurel Hamilton, and I thought, well, if you like Laurel stuff, you might like my stuff. And so that right there told her that I had done a little bit of thinking about it, which is more than a lot of people do, because they'll just send their book to any agent anywhere. But one of the things you do is to find the agent who represents something kind of like you write.
AuthorAdvance.com.
Yeah.
That's a really good agent website.
So I went and met her, and just sort of hung out. And I had taken some questions to Laurel Hamilton from her fan list, and said, hey, can I have a few minutes of your time to ask you some questions later? And she's like, yeah, sure. It was kind of a meet and greet thing. And then we hung out talking, and everybody wanted to talk to her about Jean-Claude, Anita, and Richard and everything. And I got there and was like, Laurel, do you like Buffy? I love Buffy! And we talked about Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Do you like Babylon 5? I love Babylon 5! And so the next day, I was there, and I was kind of wandering around bumping into walls at the convention, which is what I do. And Laurel says, hey Jim, do you want to go to lunch? And I'm like, I eat lunch?
I love you.
Because I'm Mr. Eloquent. And then, so I found myself at lunch with Laurel and her agent and two other agents and a couple other authors, and just hanging out. And it turned out they liked Buffy and Babylon 5. And so we geeked out about Buffy and Babylon 5. And by the end of the weekend, I'd had offers from every agent at the table to represent me. And one of them was Richard Mainhart, who's my first agent, and one was Jen Jackson, who's my current agent. And I went to Jen Jackson, and I'm like, but Jen, you rejected me. And she says, I know. I said, 2 weeks ago. She said, I know, but that was before I knew that you played the Amber Dice's role-playing game. Hardly anybody's played that. And that was, and then that was kind of, I mean, getting out and meeting people and kind of finding common ground with them, it made a big difference. So, find the agent who is likely to represent your stuff, and try and target those folks first, and get out and meet them if you can. But yeah.
Obviously, you have Murphy doing Aikido and a lot of swordplay going on. What sort of martial arts research or background do you have? And is that
I started with Shorin-ryu when I was a kid, like 10 or 12, and I did that for a while. When I got a little bit older, when I was a teenager, I started learning Ryukyu Kempo. And that was from some extremely skilled teachers. And I was very fortunate. I had no idea how fortunate I was at the time because I was like 17. But yeah, I wound up for one whole summer having a one-on-one lesson for an hour every day with a guy who was a Japanese collegiate champion in the 6th dan in the art that I was studying. He was a champion Aikido guy in Japan, where they kind of take that stuff seriously. And he was a teacher who was one of those teachers who taught you, who thought that hurting the student is a great way to get the student to learn things. And I was the guy, because I have nerd enthusiasm, I was always the guy who volunteered for everything. So I learned a lot from Mr. Shitaku, and that was good. I got my one good martial arts story. I'll have to tell it sometime another time. But After that, I studied Goju Shoiryu for several years in college. That was my instructor had learned his martial arts from a guy who developed his own variant of Goju Shoiryu that was based around street fighting. That was very practical martial art. There was a whole lot of kick them in the knee, stomp on the bridge of their foot involved in that martial art, and a lot of emphasis on street fighting tactics and how to survive. So a lot of the punch them in the neck stuff is the kind of stuff I get from there. I've done some taekwondo, I've done some boxing, I've done some kung fu, which I was terrible at. I've done some aikido, which I was terrible at. Because not every martial art fits every kind of personality and temperament and so on. And aikido is just the most beautiful, graceful martial art, and I wish I was good at it. Because aikido is a great art. It's got so much style. It's like, how stupid would you like to look? Just come at me that hard, and that's how dumb I'll make you look. It's a wonderful martial art. And I've had to use it half a dozen times, in my whole life maybe. But that's cool. I mean, it was great practice. It was good to learn, and then a bunch of fencing, which mostly I do with boffer weapons and lark. Nothing at all to do with martial arts except for the footwork. The footwork's the same. But yeah, back here.
So mixed martial arts, fans or not? Fan or not?
Mixed martial arts, bad or not? Not. It's going to be around a while. I don't know. Did you guys see? What was the name of it? Here Comes the Boom. with Kevin James. Oh my gosh! Because it seems so goofy, but it was actually a pretty good movie. I was impressed with it. Yeah, it kind of exposes you to mixed martial arts, and this is sort of what the world looks like, and so on. I know a bunch of mixed martial arts guys, a bunch of the guys that hang out with my kid who do mixed martial arts. There's way too much groundwork. I don't have nearly enough groundwork to hang with those guys. But so I've just got to hope I can hit them once and put them down. But it comes to that. Yeah.
I'm sorry. There's so many authors that once they get as far as you have into their series, they kind of just seem like they're just in it because they have a deadline. How do you keep your guys so engaging where you can fill a room where we all want to know what happens next?
I don't know, man. I just do what I do.
Well, like you were mentioning Laurel Hamilton, after Obsidian Butterfly, I just didn't care for her work any longer. I didn't like the direction it was going. I thought it was just badly written fan fiction. And it's like, your guys there is just like, oh my God, no way. And you keep reading, oh my God, what?
I think it's mostly because I've got an end in mind for the story. And so I can pace the story to where it feels like we're building towards something, that there's important things still coming. And to where there's a pace to it that is not, I can kind of scale it. Okay, I know where he is now. I know where he's going to have to be, this far down the line. So I can sort of build toward that. Honestly, I think that's what it is I've got an end in mind, and stories are supposed to have an end.
Gotcha.
And I've got time for one more. So.
Okay.
Well, following on that, you had the end in mind when you started?
Yes.
Okay. And then my actual question, favorite gaming system? Why?
Favorite gaming system? Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. Mostly for the horrible critical hit tables. By chance, the blow has severed an artery. That kind of thing. And also because it was kind of where I first started learning the game, seriously. Seriously play tactical game. Because I gave with a bunch of guys from the gaming store who were older than me. And so I was learning it there. And so when I went to college, I took Warhammer with me and got the Citadel Mighty Fortress, the old one, and played through the Lichmaster campaign and all these other Warhammer games. But I love Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. I realized recently that my son had gotten to be 21 years old and never actually played actual Dungeons and Dragons. And I was like, oh my God, I failed as a parent. So I'm like, I have to change this. I have to change it now. And I went out to get Dungeons and Dragons, and I realized Dungeons and Dragons wasn't Dungeons and Dragons anymore.
Right.
But it was Dungeons and Warcraft. Or Dungeons and
You just got to get the old days.
I actually play tested 4th edition and wrote him a review for it. I had to sign my child away and everything with the disclosure agreement, and wrote him a review for it. And I wrote a 2-word review of 4th edition for Wizards of the Coast, which said "New Coke." it was apparently not well received. But anyway, so I couldn't run D&D, so we went out and got Pathfinder.
Yes!
Which is actually D&D and fun. And and because I don't make the rules, this is where it starts. When you start playing Dungeons and Dragons, you play Caves of Chaos. That's where I came from. And so I started running them through Caves of Chaos in a zombie apocalypse world, where you know, the keep on the Borderlands was the only place that was one of the only human establishments left. The zombies were everywhere else, and their mission was, you know, in order for them to be able to stay at the keep on the Borderlands, they had to agree to go off to the Caves of Chaos and try and make contact with the Greenskins and make allies with them against the zombies.
Oh, cool.
So that was a totally different. The diplomatic mission to the Caves of Chaos was completely different than your average dungeon stop. You know, they wind up recruiting the Medusa. You know, it's like, okay, awesome. This is you know, you actually wound up with the Medusa in the party. That was fun. But anyway, guys, we're out of time. Thank you very much for coming to see us.